Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Jordan Publishing, and it's about charities, a favourite subject of mine. This is called Running a Charity. It's now in the 4th edition. It's also available as an ebook. And my wife and I have written a review, and we've given it the title for our review, Compulsory Reading for All Who Administer or Advise Charities. And in fact it's the advice and the administering of charities, which this book is all about. It's been written by Mark Mullen. There's the book. It's a paperback. There it is. There's the spine and then there's the back. It's a light book, very easy to read. It's only under 300 pages. There's the index there, which you've got at the back. You've got some model annual reports for large charities. You've got all sorts of other little things which are right at the back. Charitable objectives, running a charity and so forth. A lot of very useful charitable objects, always very, very important. And then you've got the body copy of the book itself. I just want to show you what's actually in it. Actually, one thing I will show you, you've got a constitution for a charity there, which is very helpful. Very much a hands-on experience book for experienced people and the less experienced as well. There are footnotes which are very helpful, and there is some numbering. The numbering isn't quite the way one would have it in parts of the book, but you do have the standard paragraph numbering which goes with the individual chapters. And then of course, as I say, you've got quite a large number of appendices, which actually, if you look at the book, that you can see how thick it is. That is the appendices. So the book itself actually only runs to 80 odd pages, the actual content of the main book. This bit here, you can see the thickness of that and how much the appendices are important in terms of the content of the book itself. Then you've got things like money and property issues. If we go right to the front, there's the front bit there. Then there is a preface. Do read the preface. I mention it in my review, which we'll talk about in a minute. You've also got the actual information about the ebook on that side. Then you've got the actual contents, a reasonably detailed contents list. Actually, there's the next page. Then we go into the appendices themselves, which, as I say, makes up quite a lot. Starting off with the various models that you've got, and then you've got one bit which I did think was very helpful, the appendix G, which is looking very much at the objects of a charity. And we then start off with what is a charity, and then we move on from there. Now, I'm going to be a little bit controversial about this when we start the review, because I'm going to say the following, and that is that the charity world has been going through a massive change in the last few years as publicity about their methods of recruitment to the cause, that's financial recruitment, remain controversial to many people. Of course, criticism of charitable giving can appear somewhat mean-spirited, so you've got to be very careful with the balance. But what we call chuggers and other people have featured recently in the newspapers, and there are some concerns about the way some of them go about getting subscriptions from people. Having said that and got that off my chest, I think it's very important to remember the very important work which charities actually do and why people form a charity in the first place. This is why this book is so important, because it's once you've got an idea about what you're going to do, you've then got to know how to do it within the rules that you've actually got. So this excellent short book and ebook, which has been written in 5 chapters by Mark Mullen, again under 100 pages for the actual written text before you get into the appendices, it's deceptively informative. In other words, there's a lot of information there, but it looks relatively straightforward, but he's put an awful lot, piled a lot in. It's the most important title, I think, for anybody who's running a charity, because it's actually easy to read apart from anything else. He mixes straightforward factual statements about the nature of charities with most helpful legal content, which we think will be of great benefit to both laymen and lawyers alike. And some basic current facts about charities are worth being considered and are set out, in fact, by Mullen in his preface. For instance, in 2014, I'm recording this in the middle of 2015, but in 2014, There are more than 164,000 charities registered in England and Wales alone. It's a staggering number in comparison with the past, and the work of now, of course, which is now in its 4th edition, is most helpful for the people involved, because obviously the work is highly thought of, but it's the most successful title in my view for what is clearly a wide readership that would need to have some idea of what to do. So it's not just the law that we're looking at here, it's actually tips about the way you go forward with the enterprise that you've got. What we found was that running a charity, the book here, remains resolutely popular and a user-friendly read for both the professional and layperson alike, giving clear guidance on the legal implications of setting up and running a charity in the UK. The book includes coverage of the United Kingdom's constitutional requirements that we have, and deals effectively with money and property matters, also fundraising, which is the current contentious area for some, and the functions of the trustees. In addition, of course, the book offers very informative appendices, which makes up actually 2/3 of the book, covering all the main documents required for setting up and running a charity. If you've got this idea about what you want to do, this is the book for you. There are full details of useful sources of further information as well. In addition, Mullen's updated his book to include a number of significant areas of recent reform which are mentioned in the various pieces of blurb. For instance, that's the Charities Act 2011, Companies Act 2006, the massive piece of legislation, the introduction of charitable incorporated associations and organisations and so on. It also covers the regulatory developments in both Scotland and Northern Ireland and provides an up-to-date piece of information on new statements of recommended practice and reporting requirements. An important area because, again, there are questions raised with the huge number of charities around about how they are actually looked at. And so obviously the reporting element is really quite important. I think probably the final word must be given to the role of the trustees of charities themselves. They're facing ever more intensive scrutiny of their activities whilst keeping up with the legal developments and the regulation of the sector. And Mullen's book succeeds with his intention of offering some pointers to both charity specialists and also non-specialist advisors. And it's important, I think, to remember that other jurisdictions are mentioned in the book by way of comparison on how a charity mechanism actually works. So do bear in mind that the book's not intended to give legal information or advice as such. It's the charity trustees who are encouraged to seek and consult relevant professionals or assistance of their regulator if the occasion or activity demands. And that's the beauty of the book. It's wide, yet it's got a knowledgeable appeal about it, and it's detailed too, to an extent that most of the questions you probably have will be answered. The law's stated as at January 2015. I've been very impressed with this book. It's really, as I say, an interesting book. It's got some nice comments on the back from people who've reviewed the work, and what I do like is there are some very useful points about what you can and can't do. There's, for instance, a very important point here about computers and websites, which I think very much for the future. The premises are covered, all the nitty-gritty things that you need. Some of you will see, for instance, here, that this is dealing with the, actually in the appendices, the footnoting there is quite heavy. You can see there it's half and half, actually. And that means that they're trying to explain, in this particular case, trying to explain certain parts of some of the legislation. And again, I think that is well explained throughout. I'd like to thank Mark Mullen very much, and also Jordan's, for producing this work, and the fact that it's now in an ebook as well. It's an excellent resource for anybody running a charity. So good luck to you with what you're doing, and once again, thank you to all concerned for a very useful piece of information for us. Thanks. Bye-bye.